Okay then, you guys, after a recent video, the dangers to you as a person while out hawking, that got quite a bit of interest. And I thought, there's a lot of people getting new birds this year, but of course a lot of those will be new falconers as well, first time for them out this season. So yeah, it can't be more importantly than your own safety, but up there for any falconer would be your hawk's safety. So I just want to look at a few things that are gonna possibly go under the radar if you haven't had a mentor and you're just trying to do falconry from social media, which is never ideal at all. This channel is here to help the birds and help yourselves, but there's nothing better than having a mentor holding your hand all the way through, on the end of the phone when you need them, and of course going on a bona fide falconry course where someone that knows what they're doing is going to give you some of the hard-won background knowledge and observe that you're doing it correctly. So when you're out in the field, there's a lot of stuff that you can see and a lot of stuff you can't see that can hurt your hawk. And there's an awful lot of stuff, if you haven't done it before, that you just won't know that are there, that can kill your bird. So when you're out flying your hawk, one thing that's a real danger that's often unseen, certainly to the novice, is transformer boxes, electrical boxes. They're usually painted grey and they're usually on a post on their own, often a wooden post, and these transformer boxes take power from an electricity grid that's probably passing on a pylon some distance away, and they'll bring it to a small holding or a small farmhouse or a horse stables, and they'll be up on a wooden post, not always wooden, a pretty chunky box with wires coming off the top, little doobries that the wires are attached to. Can't remember what they're called. There's usually, say, 3 wires coming off the top of these boxes. Now this is why they're a problem. The birds find them a magnetic thing. Oh, look at that, just right for me to perch on and hang my tail down the side. Almost can't resist landing on them. Always more open than a branch of a tree. They just draw the birds in to land on them. If your bird touches 2 of those 3 poles together, shorts them out, the current will pass through your bird. It will fry your bird to the point you will have sparks pouring out of it where it's touching, and it'll be frozen to the thing it'll be stuck on, and it'll be electrocuted and badly burnt. Do birds ever survive? Unbelievably, I've known people that have had birds that have even had showers of sparks coming out of them and holes blown in their leg and out their back, and they've survived, but most of them don't, as you can imagine. This is the problem. If you fly your hawks where you know there is one or in sight of one, you're massively risking your bird. I say hawk generic for falconry bird. You're massively risking your hawk's life, massively. They are drawn to them like they're magnets to birds of prey. Don't fly your birds around transformer boxes. Now I know some of you are going to say, well, my bird I could lose a bird. It could fly 100 miles a day. Who knows what transformer box it might land? Yeah, absolutely. You could walk across the M1 at a walking pace 10 times in your life and somehow at the right time of day, perfectly timed, not get run over. Equally, you could do it once and never make the other side. You have to mitigate risk. Your birds are wild and free. Their risk of death is always prevalent, or certainly present, just like it is for a wild one. Don't fly your birds where you know there's transformer boxes. They are destructive to birds. And then you'll say, well, in that case, they'd kill all the buzzards. Yeah, they kill loads of birds of prey every year. In fact, it's well documented that foxes patrol areas where there are transformer boxes to pick up carcasses of birds at night or in the morning. When the fox is out at night, birds that have roosted. Deadly to birds. Okay, this is a real one, especially I'm going to say for goshawk flyers. You've got a great bit of land, it's almost open sheep graze land, and there's rabbit holes here, there and everywhere. Little burrows of just maybe 6 holes. The perfect way to fly rabbits with your hawk. Dropping a ferret down, standing well back to give that rabbit a really good sporting chance, and they're bolting into billiard smooth graze land where those rabbits are like Exocet missiles across the landscape. Very exciting, a good test for your goshawk. But It's a sheep grazed area. There's sheep netting. Some people call it pig netting, sheep fencing. You know the stuff. Wire netting, about 1 metre or so, 4 foot high, with holes about this big in the wire netting. Those rabbits know exactly where they're going. Now, if your bird chases them across an open field, and that rabbit knows it's going to pass under or through a hole or even over a sheep netting to get to a little warren or a patch of cover the other side, if your goshawk, especially, I say goshawks because they're more likely to be going a bit faster, and to be honest, they're way less intelligent than a Harris hawk, but this applies to all of your hawks. It even applies massively to people hunting crows and corvids with a large falcon. Those things use that netting to their advantage. They know what they're doing. Your hawk's closing. It's not going to give up now. It's just 3 feet away. They're going at full chat. The rabbit slips under a hole it knows is under the sheep netting. Your hawk doesn't see the netting. It's invisible to it at this speed. It just thinks it's a bit of gossamer or a tiny fine bit of twig. That's what it'll fly through that in the forest. Hits it. It cuts their wings off. It breaks their necks. It does untold catastrophic damage to a fast-flying bird of prey. Sheep netting is a bane of a falconer's life. It is often on some really good rabbiting land. If you're lucky and your hawk hits it hard but doesn't cause any serious injury, it'll recognise it more then. But 50-50 chance your hawk's going to be injured or dead. This is how I've always mitigated it when I've been hunting on land, rabbiting on land, crisscrossed by sheep netting. I will start my young hawk off by ferreting the holes that are actually along the fence line. The rabbit is going to come out one side of the fence or the other. Invariably, it will run along the fence line before turning left or right through the fence to break away. Stand so you are touching the fence line with your hawk. Stand well back. When the rabbit breaks away from you up the fence line, your hawk will fly it along the fence line. The rabbit invariably will jink and go straight through the fence, and your hawk will turn and go straight into the fence. Now your hawk's travelling fast, but now it's just done a 90-degree turn, and it's only hit the fence from that kind of distance. Works for me every time. You can only decide how you're going to mitigate this actual problem. But my hawks learn very, very, very quickly, ow, that bloody hurt, and I can't get through that stuff anyway. I'll go over. Don't just let a hawk slip a rabbit 50-yard chase towards sheep netting. It will get injured or die, or you'll be massively lucky and your hawk even luckier. Let them learn about the fence from a far, far lower impact before. Don't even fly them openly until you're sure your hawk knows to go straight up and over. It doesn't matter how close it is unless it knows it's going to grab that rabbit this side of the fence. Sheep netting, definitely watch out for that. Okay, theft and release. I don't know, it's not a massive thing, certainly not around here, but I'd say people releasing your hawks because there's some kind of anti or think they're doing good, which they're obviously not, or a theft. How do you mitigate people letting your hawks escape? Well, number one, the wind's probably the worst one. Number two, people let hawks escaping because they haven't got a double door system in play, a porch system in play. Those things probably lose more hawks than people stealing them and letting them go in the UK. I think it's a difficult one. My aviaries have got padlocks on, the premises is locked up, it's incredibly well fenced off, and there's security cameras. At the end of the day, they're in aviaries or they're in mews where a pair of wire cutters is probably going to get you in whatever padlock you've got on there. If people want to steal stuff from you and it's going to take you a while to get to your premises, even if you can see it happening via your cameras on your phone, well, if they've got balaclavas on and you submit to the police, they're not going to do anything, are they? Your bird's gone. So really, you've just got to try and slow them down. Slow down the entry to your premises. Have padlocks on your doors of your aviaries, even though you know they can get their way in. Heck, some of our stuff's got bounce netting on. So really, it's probably more making your property secure than the actual aviaries themselves. Incredibly, incredibly difficult because it's a very easy thing to break into. Okay, loss of your hawks through I'm going to say two things. Really, loss of your hawks through you losing it. not knowing your job as a falconer, not knowing falconry, not putting into practice what you've learned or not learning it in the first place. Safety position every single time before you untie your hook from its perch, a weathering perch or its muse perch. Every single time. Safety position, incredibly strong knuckle grip when you change the kit. But for sure, losing your hawk, like we see so many every week on social media, with its swivel, jesses and leash attached, that bird is going to die very, very quickly, a slow, miserable death. Understand falconry, learn about falconry. Do not cut corners because it was all right the last few times you did it. Learn how to untie and tether your bird safely. Safety position all the time. That brings me to equipment failure, the same thing. So I've brought a swivel in the past from one of the most longest standing, well-renowned, reputable falconry kit makers in the UK. The swivel was a piece of junk. It was not fit for purpose. Buying it from a good source, not off eBay. I've also brought a high ring perch from Goshawk many years ago. Looked good. I still use it today, but I've had to modify it because the tether ring has been badly welded. Looked beautifully polished up on the outside. The actual, just there on the ring, the weld just dropped out one day. Goshawk had been on it for weeks. The weld dropped out. It wasn't welded. It wasn't hot enough, I guess. Walked up to my Goshawk. It baited away and ended up in the... Well, what happened? It baited away. Ended up in the corner of the garden with all of its stuff on. Can you imagine if that had got away? Equipment failure. It luckily kind of cornered itself under my privet hedge and I literally dived on the end of the leash and got it. But that could have killed and lost that bird. So check your equipment regularly, buy reputable. My ring perches now come from JWL. They're not cheap. They will last multiple human lifetimes. They're that well engineered. I've never had a problem with those whatsoever. But grease your leather, check your kit. But above all else, most of these failures, whatever anyone tells you, comes down to human error, not handling their falconry birds correctly. Really important. Losing your bird through a stupid mistake that's your own fault. Horrible thing to do. But we've got to say, of course, that a lot of these are lost because people aren't using telemetry. They're not that good at falconry. They're not that good at fieldcraft. And they've lost their bird and now they can't find it because simply they didn't want to pay out for the equipment, telemetry. If you can't afford telemetry in the UK, you can't afford to be a falconer. Tough shit. It really is that simple, isn't it? I kind of want a Ferrari now and again. Just once a year. I wouldn't mind whizzing around in a Ferrari. I can't afford a Ferrari. Bugger me. I can't have a Ferrari. Now, a problem that definitely is happening more and more in my falconry lifetime is predation of your birds. Now, that can be as simple as rats and weasels and stoats getting into your muse, and especially if you've got small, tiny micro raptors more than ever, but don't underestimate the power of a rat, believe it or not. But I'm talking about predators when you're flying your birds. So your bird's gone off some distance, it's made a kill, and you've got to track it down. Birds of prey that are wild are now a definite problem for falconers in the UK. Buzzards, we think of our common buzzards as quite a lowly thing compared to, say, just a Harris's hawk or peregrine falcon. They're, just really rapacious predators. And the buzzard, he'll rather scavenge and catch smaller stuff if he can. But it's a pirate. It sees your bird make a kill, your bird's manting on the ground. The buzzard's 2,000 feet in the sky, probably more than that sometimes. And it will stoop like any good peregrine. You watch a buzzard stoop, they are phenomenal. And it's going to try and take on your bird. And its number one goal is actually to steal some of the food. It's only got to have a squabble, put a talon in your bird. You'll never see that mark under the feathers. You'll never see it. 3 or 4 days later, your bird drops down dead of septicemia. Buzzards are killing falconers' birds. They are, and they do. It's a simple fact of life. So how do you mitigate that? I guess think about where you're flying. Think about not dilly-dallying, having good telemetry, and good fieldcraft, getting to your bird pretty fast. Foxes too. I've had 2 or 3 friends that have got there literally when the fox is 6 foot away from the bird on its kill, and the fox has seen a human, it's been stalking up, the falconer's got there just in time. I remember reading these things in American magazine articles when I was really a young man, a lad, and reading about falconers that are training their salukis, sighthounds, to follow their falcons on the open sort of areas of America, quite different to a lot of the UK. But running dogs, sight hounds, that'll follow the flight and lay down next to the hawk to stop golden eagles, red tails and coyotes taking those birds on their kills before the falconer can track them down. I used to think, wow, how amazing that they've got so many predators in their skies compared to here in the UK. Well, now we have them, and we have the foxes too. So predation in the mews is one thing, predation on the weathering lawn. An unattended, uncovered weathering lawn. Someone told me recently of a goshawk on a high ring perch being killed by a wild goshawk. I've had sparrowhawks hit my goshawks on the head in the garden when I used to keep them at home. Birds of prey, other predators are definitely a problem to mitigate against. Keep your birds safe as best you can. Vehicles and windows. I've known of 2 birds that have been killed whilst being tracked down. Lost falcons that have been out for many hours, even more than a day. Ending up getting to near built up areas and ending up killing themselves on impact with house windows. They don't understand them. They've never flown around them. Equally the same, falconers birds do get hit by cars. A really fantastic guy many years ago now, when I was sort of flying, so he's my golden eagle in his early years, in the middle of nowhere, his eagle took a long old flight. In the end, it landed on a road and got run over. Quiet lane. Zeus has also done that. He's landed on the local road here, which used to be a quiet country lane, and he just sat there waiting for me. He lands on the deck. I've trained him not to land in trees, so he doesn't land on power points. He's always trained to land on the ground. Landed on a road, nice and open. Just sat there waiting for me to come and find him. No cars came until I picked him up. 3 seconds later, a car came whizzing down the road. Roads are bad news. Birds flying across roads, chasing prey. I've even had a peregrine hybrid chasing a rook across the road and literally covered my eyes and waited for the bang as a lorry whizzed down the road. I don't even know to this day how it missed the windscreen, because it looked like an absolute dead cert. The falcon and the rook both managed to get away. Unfortunately for the rook, he didn't get a lot further because he got took down at the end of the side of the road. But think about where you're flying your birds. Transformer boxes we've discussed. Windows of urban areas, they just look like a reflection of what's behind them. More sky, more woodlands, more fields. That's why the birds hit your patio doors in your gardens. It's the same thing. Think about where you're flying your birds. Okay, home and away. I'm not going to start an Australian accent. Home and away. Poisoned food. Poisoned food can be food that you're feeding at home. It can be poor quality, something wrong with it, even though you've bought it from a reputable food producer. It can be perfectly defrosted, everything else, and yet it's killed your bird. So, case study. I fed a perfectly fresh, thawed out quail, bought from one of the big names, to a merlin, Jack Merlin, fantastic display bird, and a tinsel peregrine. The merlin got the 2 breasts, lean meat. Peregrine got pretty much everything else. The next morning, the merlin had been sick, was stone dead on its perch, and the peregrine had sicked up all of its food the previous day. Bigger body mass, peregrine survived, the merlin didn't. It could have only have been something wrong with that food. Sometimes we've had chicks here that they've been packed in and blast frozen, and the whole box of chicks is frozen, but the middle is warm. Now they're going to stay warm for quite some time, and they're going to start to get more and more bacteria and go off. Check your food as you feed your birds. But the other problem is, if you kill feed like I do, personally, if you're hunting with a hawk, I believe that hawk is way more driven and way more bonded to you if you dispatch the quarry and you open up the quarry and you sit with your hawk feeding it. You're protecting it from foxes, buzzards, and it learns that relationship that you're just going to sit there and help it eat. I think that's one of the best bonds in falconry, is feeding your bird from what it actually catches. Downsides are your birds can get worms and other things. So certainly look at the inside of the thing. If the liver's all spotty, it's probably got some kind of worm cysts in there, tapeworms maybe. There's always risk to feeding any food to your hawk. I kill feed, and I say to myself, the hawk caught it, it looks healthy, it's fine. but you don't know who's shot that animal before you. And don't believe that because there's no shooting on your land, that means none of the quarry could have been shot. People poach. Little tiny lead pellets are really hard to see from a shotgun. And you can even get splinters and fragments of air rifle pellets and bullets. Now, that's a risk from you feeding what your hawk has killed, but technically you know it hasn't been shot, still could have been. Recently, a really good friend of mine, he's been supplying us with squirrels, and they're steel shot with a firearm certificate 177 air rifle. The pellets are headshot and they come out the other side. Doubly secure, we're chopping the head and necks off. But I'm still not feeding those to things like eagles and vultures, which have an incredibly strong stomach acid and which get sick from lead very quickly because they're dissolving those pellets, lead, shot or otherwise, shot or air rifle pellets. He's been supplying us with a lot of these squirrels. Emily, especially here, has been prepping the food and checking for lead, even with a metal detector, which is so unreliable. Don't go there as your main source. And she's skinning them off, and she's found 2 now that have got holes in their sides, and they've got two air rifle pellets lodged in them. These have been carrying these air rifle pellets for God knows how long, and then they've been headshot with a 177 high velocity air rifle, which is, like I say, most of that lead's probably gone straight through. Keep an eye on your food. Be aware of what your food can be carrying, because whilst I know people that have fed falcons lead shot pigeon for their whole lives and throughout their whole breeding cycle for many, many years, they seem to just cough up those pellets in the casting. Like I say, some birds like eagles can eat a tiny bit of lead and go off their feet incredibly fast. Everything's a risk, but for goodness sakes, know what the risks are and try and mitigate them as best as you possibly can. Hope this video helps some of you. Again, it's really a food for thought video, and I know it's a lot of talking ahead, but I do apologise. Lots of stuff coming soon. There's so much in here, so much in the bag, but that's what I wanted to get out there to sort of pair up with the dangers to you as a falconer. Just be aware of the dangers to you, your bird, and please comment below, because there's going to be loads of these obvious dangers that I haven't even thought of. Remember, telemetry. I'll see you soon.